Hi, everybody. This is Maureen, and I observed my student that I've chosen for um, this class's observations and testing. His name is Dave Kim. He is in one of our fourth grade classrooms, not mine, but one of the other teachers. And this young man is 9 years old, of Korean descent, and he's a little small for his age. So in the classroom, it was just a regular day. There were 23 students present, and that's our whole class. The students began class engaged in a lesson with the teacher, whole group on a carpet. And Dave was seated towards the back and to the left. There were a few other students around him, but he was off to the back a little bit, not up with the other students. Everything in the classroom seemed to be busy and productive, and the students were all attending and looking forward to what their teacher had to say. The first thing she did before she started her lesson, though, was to give the next steps. So the students listened to those, and she wrote them on the board as well. And the students were repeating these tasks back to her for their understanding, and Dave was selected to retell the third step of the directions. And as he did so, he made an additional comment of what you're not supposed to do at that time. So that was a little bit comical, because it seemed that that may have been something that he did previously that he's reminding himself of. So the students are involved in a writing lesson, explanatory writing, and the mini lesson that the teacher was providing was focused on appropriate word choice, using precise language. So this isn't vivid language for storytelling, but more precise language to get their points across, as well as providing good paragraph transition words. So he was listening, and Dave participated twice with his own responses. And while this was happening, he was sometimes looking at the teacher, but mostly looking around at the other students and some items that may have been, that were around him. His responses were appropriate and they were correct. He had no hesitation in giving them. And while this was happening, over time, he was sitting in several different positions, starting off in a crisscross position, then moved up to his knees, then squatting, and moved back to his knees or back to sitting, maybe with his legs underneath him at the time too. So he moved around continually as he was listening, and he also had his hands pushed inside his pockets while he was talking and changing positions like this. Dave and the other students were well versed in what to do next, as they then transitioned from that small group, or from the whole group lesson, back to their independent work at their seats. And the teacher was going to begin her individual conferences with the students. So when she dismissed them to their seats, rather than going straight to his seat, I watched him take two different detours and visited with a couple of other students. Just, it looked like checking in and, chatting, visiting. And he stopped also then at his own desk and opened his graphic novel and began reading before he was settling into his work. So the teacher had observed this and was using proximity and repeated directions for him, although she really presented the redirect to the whole class just by just by being close to him, it was helpful to him. So he was bringing out his materials. He looked back to the board for what he was to do next. But as he was supposed to be working, you could see some avoidance to that writing, as he was interested in other students' behaviors or their actions, or where they may have been going or what they were doing. He was also a bit consumed by the process of conferences, and the students would sign up for a conference when they were prepared and ready. So this looked like it was ongoing from the previous day. And he kept watching for when it would be his turn, counting the number of people ahead of him versus the amount of time left on the clock. And ultimately, then he also decided to take a bathroom break, as he noticed that there were a few others who were headed in that direction. So that took away time from his work. The observation of this class ended before it was Dave's turn to conference with the teacher, so he'll probably go tomorrow. He was very diligent in cleaning up all of his materials when the teacher let them know it was time to pick up and leave for music. I noticed too he was far more engaged in his cleanup and putting things away, which he did well, rather than work on his writing that was the task provided. So as Dave ended and lined up with the class, his hands were back in his pockets, kind of twisting and turning as he walked along, and there were a few conversations he had with some people in line, which delayed him from getting into his spot, and he had to use one or two attempts to find his right place in line order before the class settled and headed out the door to music. Overall, Dave seems to be a really carefree kind of learner. His attitude seems great, and his classroom demeanor seems quite happy and not deterred by redirection or correction or things of that nature. So I look forward to doing some testing with Dave and letting you know how those things go in the future. Thanks. Have a good night, guys.